I never thought my life would take such a wild turn. I was always the good wife, faithful, steady, respectable. I lived in a modest wooden house on the coast of Belize, where the Caribbean breeze would kiss my skin every morning and the sea sang lullabies every night. My husband, Junior, was a fisherman. Hardworking, decent, but simple. His world was small sea, boat, rum, sleep, and sometimes I felt like I was drowning in it. It all started the day I had to visit the tax office in Belmopan. Junior had left it to me, as always. "Sort it out, baby," he said, handing me a crumpled envelope filled with receipts, scraps of paper, and a half-done form. When I walked into that little air-conditioned office, wearing my best blue dress and a borrowed pair of heels, I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a grumpy woman behind a desk. Maybe a line a mile long. Instead, I met him, Matteo. Matteo, the taxman. Lord, have mercy, he was fine. Tall, caramel skin smooth like polished mahogany, a smile that made the world tilt just a little, and the kind of voice that could melt butter on a cold day. His shirt was pressed, his tie loose at the collar, and he smelled faintly of soap and fresh coffee. At first, it was innocent. I sat across from him, fumbling with the papers, sweating under the cold blast of the AC. He chuckled softly when I handed him the wrong forms, his fingers brushing mine lightly, sending a jolt through me. Our eyes met just for a second, but something passed between us. Something dangerous. "You're not from around here," he said, looking at me like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. "I'm from Dangriga," I said, my voice too breathy, too eager. He smiled, slow and knowing. "Figures. Beautiful things come from Dangriga." I should have stood up. I should have gone home to Junior and cooked stew chicken like always. But instead, I stayed. We talked. About taxes. About life. About dreams. About everything I had forgotten I wanted. When I finally left the office, it was after closing time, and Matteo had slipped his number into my hand with a wink. I told myself I wouldn't call him. I had no business calling him. But 2 nights later, after Junior had passed out on the couch with a half-empty bottle of rum in his hand, I did. The first time we met outside the office, it was at a little bar tucked away by the river. It was supposed to be just a drink. Just a little excitement. I wore a red skirt that clung to my hips and a white blouse that dipped just a little too low. When I walked in, Matteo was already there, leaning casually against the bar, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. He bought me a drink. Then another. We talked and laughed until the world blurred around us. I told him things I hadn't even told myself: how lonely I was, how trapped I felt, how sometimes I dreamed of running away and starting over. "You deserve more," he whispered, his hand resting lightly on my knee under the table. It was like a spell. I leaned into him, and before I knew it, we were kissing hot, desperate, wrong, but God, it felt right. We stumbled out into the humid night, hearts pounding, hands tangled, not caring who saw. He drove me to a little guest house down the road, a place where no one would ask questions. In that small, dim room, with the ceiling fan clicking softly overhead, I forgot who I was. I forgot Junior. I forgot my life. All I knew was Matteo's hands on my skin, his mouth on my neck, the sweet, terrible rush of being wanted. Of feeling alive. Afterward, tangled in the sheets, I lay there staring at the cracked ceiling, guilt slowly seeping into me like seawater through a broken boat. "What have I done?" I whispered. Matteo kissed my shoulder. "You lived." But the truth was, I had also betrayed. The next morning, I went home. Junior was frying fish in the kitchen like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just shattered the little world we built together. I kissed him on the cheek, tasted the salt of his sweat, and blinked back tears. I tell myself it was an accident. That I didn't mean to fall. That maybe, somehow, it was the heat, the rum, the loneliness, anything but me. But deep down, I know. It wasn't the tax forms or the broken system or the drunk nights. It was the hunger. The hunger for something more. And in Matteo's arms, for one forbidden night, I fed it. And now I live with it. Every day. I used to believe that love was something simple. Something you could hold in your hands, like a seashell found on the shores of Dangriga, smooth and predictable. My husband, Junior, gave me that kind of love, steady, faithful, and as familiar as the tides. But sometimes familiar starts to feel like invisible. It was a Wednesday morning when everything began to change. Junior, careless as always with anything that didn't involve fishing, shoved a stack of wrinkled receipts into my hand. "Go sort it out with the tax man," he said, his words already half swallowed by the rum he drank with breakfast. I grumbled under my breath, tied up my hair, and put on a plain skirt and blouse. I wasn't trying to impress anybody, least of all a man from the tax department. I caught the rickety bus to Belmopan, swaying with the potholes and the scent of rain-soaked earth filling the air. When I stepped inside the government office, the cold air from the AC hit me like a slap. I looked around for someone official looking, my hands already sweating against the paperwork. And that's when I saw him. Matteo. He wasn't what I expected. No wrinkled shirt, no bad attitude. He was tall, with skin the color of roasted coffee beans and eyes that could see right through a woman's soul if she wasn't careful. His tie hung a little loose, like he was too alive for the stiff rules of the office. And when he smiled, Lord help me, the whole room seemed to bend toward him. He called me over with a nod, and I crossed the room feeling clumsy, my sandals slapping against the tile. I sat across from him, fumbling with the papers, while he watched me with a quiet amusement, like he had all the time in the world just for me. "You from Dangriga?" he asked, his voice a low, sweet drawl. "Yeah," I managed, blinking too fast. "How you know?" He smiled wider. "Could tell. You move like the ocean, like you belong somewhere wilder than here." I should have laughed it off. I should have kept my head down. But the way he looked at me like I was somebody again, it cracked something open inside me. We spent longer than necessary sorting the documents. He leaned close when he explained things, his hand brushing mine in ways that felt too deliberate to be accidents. I caught myself smiling like a fool, laughing too easily at his jokes. When I finally gathered my things, ready to flee before I made a bigger fool of myself, he slipped a small paper under my folder. His number, written in blue ink, bold and sure. I told myself I wouldn't use it. I had a husband waiting at home, a kitchen to clean, a life to live. But when night fell and Junior was already half drunk and snoring in front of the TV, the house too quiet and my heart too loud, I found myself staring at that number, burning a hole through my pocket. The first time we met outside the office, it was just a drink. That's what I told myself. But from the moment Matteo's eyes found mine across the dim bar, I knew better. One drink led to two. His hand brushed mine, my knee brushed his. One wrong look, one breath too close, and suddenly, the world was spinning, and I was falling into him like a woman walking straight into the storm. That night in the cheap guest house by the river, I forgot who I was supposed to be. His hands were rough and tender all at once, like he was building me from scratch. His mouth knew exactly where to go, how to find the parts of me that had been sleeping for years. Afterward, as the fan creaked overhead and the sweat dried on my skin, the guilt hit me like a second storm. But it was too late. I had crossed a line that didn't UN cross. After that first night, I thought it would end there. A mistake, a moment, a secret I would carry alone. But it didn't end. Matteo had already stolen something from me, something I didn't even realize was missing. Not just my body. Not just a kiss in a dark room or a few stolen hours. He stole my heart. Quietly. Completely. It started small, like all dangerous things do. A message here. A call late at night when the crickets outside sang and Junior snored in the next room. A smile across the tax office when I had no real business being there anymore. Matteo knew things about me that Junior never bothered to ask. He knew I loved to swim far out past the reefs, where the water turned dark blue and cold. He knew I sang when I cooked, soft and low under my breath. He knew I wanted more even when I was too scared to say it. He listened. Really listened. And every word he heard, he tucked away like it was treasure, like I was treasure. One afternoon, just before rainy season came down hard on Belize, he took me to a hidden beach, far from where the tourists ever went. We sat on the sand with the sea foaming at our toes, the sky heavy and grey, the scent of salt thick in the air. "You're wasting your life, Mummy," he said, his voice rough. You're meant for bigger things than a man who only loves the sea more than you. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. That Junior was a good man, that I had made my vows, that this whatever this was would pass. But when Matteo touched my face, cupping my cheek with the kind of tenderness that could drown a woman, the lies stuck in my throat. I didn't want it to pass. I didn't want to go back. He kissed me there, under the bruised sky, the sea hissing around us, and in that kiss I gave up fighting. I gave him everything, every secret, every wish I had buried under years of duty and smallness. I loved him. I loved him in the kind of way that terrified me. Wild. Fierce. Reckless. The kind of love that could tear a life apart if you let it. And still I let it. Because once a heart is stolen, you can't ask for it back. You can only hope the thief will be gentle with it. Matteo wasn't gentle. He was fire. And I was already burning. At first, Matteo seemed like a dream. A secret carved out of the ordinary days. Something just for me, wild, selfish, and sweet. I was so busy falling into him that I didn't stop to ask the questions I should have. Didn't want to. But secrets have a way of rotting from the inside out. One evening, we were lying tangled up in the worn sheets of the guest house again, the sound of rain drumming steady against the tin roof. Matteo was tracing lazy circles along my bare back, his breath warm against my neck, when a strange look crossed his face, a flicker of something dark, something trapped. You ever think about what happens after? I asked him softly, almost joking, my finger drawing a slow line across his chest. After what? He said, too fast. After all this, I said, gesturing at the narrow bed, the cracked ceiling us. He sighed, a deep, heavy thing that seemed to come from his soul. Then he told me. He was married. Had been for 5 years. Her name was Clarissa. She was a schoolteacher back in San Ignacio. Sweet. God-fearing. The kind of woman who baked coconut tarts for church and wore long dresses even when the sun beat down mercilessly. She don't see me anymore, Matteo said, his voice low, almost ashamed. Same way Junior don't see you. I sat up in bed, pulling the sheet over myself like it could protect me from the truth suddenly crashing in around us. You lied to me, I whispered. My throat burned with the betrayal. He reached for me, but I flinched away. I didn't lie, he said, desperation cracking his voice. I didn't want to lose you before I even had you. Those words, lose you before I even had you, they wrapped themselves around my heart like a vine, choking out my anger before it could bloom. Because the awful truth was I understood. I understood too well. Matteo wasn't a monster. He was just another soul starving for something he couldn't name. Same as me. Maybe that's what made it all so much worse. We weren't just two people caught in a mistake. We were two broken people, finding the wrong kind of shelter in each other. From that night on, everything between us was more frantic, more desperate, like we both knew we were standing on borrowed time, clinging to each other harder because the tide was rising fast. When we kissed, it wasn't sweet anymore. It was hunger. It was fear. It was the knowledge that we were both liars, both thieves. Matteo went home to Clarissa every night with my perfume still on his skin. I went home to Junior, crawling into bed beside him, pretending I hadn't just given my soul to another man. Some nights, when the house was quiet and the weight of what I was doing crushed down on me, I would press my forehead against the window pane and stare out into the Black Sea, wishing it could wash me clean. But I knew better. You can't steal love and not pay the price. And deep down, I was already counting the days until the storm broke. No matter how much I tried to hate Matteo after he told me about Clarissa, I couldn't stay away. I told myself it was wrong, I told myself to end it, but my body, my heart, they didn't listen. Because Matteo did things to me that Junior never even thought to try. Things that made me forget my own name. With Junior, it was always the same, quick, clumsy, a duty done between dinner and sleep. No fire, no hunger, no real seeing. I could close my eyes and be anywhere or nowhere and he wouldn't even notice. But Matteo, he touched me like he was memorizing me. Like every inch of my skin had a secret he was desperate to learn. Like my pleasure was something sacred, something he worshipped. The first time he laid me down, he took his time, slow, patient, maddening. His hands were firm but gentle, sliding over my hips, my thighs, my back, leaving trails of fire wherever he touched. He kissed me like a starving man deep, claiming, tasting every part of me like I was something rare and precious. He looked me in the eyes when he moved inside me, not rushed, not selfish. He wanted to see me every gasp, every tremble, every broken cry he pulled from my lips. And he smiled, not that cocky grin he showed the world, but a real smile, soft and full of something like awe. When Matteo made love to me, I felt powerful. I felt beautiful. I felt alive. With Junior, I was a chore. With Matteo, I was a queen. He knew exactly where to touch, how to listen to my body without a single word passing between us. He made me come apart over and over, until my body was nothing but heat and shaking and prayers whispered into the sheets. And when it was over, he didn't roll away and snore like Junior. He stayed, tangled around me, his hands roaming lazily, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. He whispered things dirty, sweet, beautiful things that made my cheeks burn and my heart ache. It wasn't just the way he moved. It was the way he made me feel like I was the only woman in the world that mattered. Like I was the ocean, and he would gladly drown in me. And even when I hated myself for it, hated the lies, the betrayal, the broken promises, I craved him. I needed him. Every stolen night with Matteo made it harder to go back to Junior's cold bed. Harder to pretend that I didn't know what real touch, real passion, real love felt like anymore. I was already too far gone. And every time Matteo slid inside me, every time he made me shudder and cry out and come alive again, I lost a little more of my old life. I didn't even care. I would have given it all up, the marriage, the house, the life I had built, just to feel that way forever. Because once you've been touched like that, once you've been truly seen like that, there's no going back.